Hey everyone, welcome to a deep dive all about a car that honestly needs no introduction, but we'll give it one anyway. We're talking about the Mini, especially for those of you who love Vintage Car Chronicles on Spotify, Deezer, Apple Music, and YouTube. You know we love our classics.
And you can't get much more classic than the Mini, that's for sure.
So true. We've got articles, excerpts, the whole deal. Today, we're going full Mini geek. And for all you car history buffs, you know it's more than just like, oh, cute little car. The Mini's got stories.
It really does. It's a story of innovation, necessity, and some pretty wild design choices.
Speaking of, before we go any further, got to set the scene, right? 1956. The UK is dealing with that whole Suez crisis, fuel rationings hit hard, suddenly bubble cars are everywhere.
And not everyone was a fan, right?
Yeah.
Especially not Leonard Lord, the head honcho at BMC. Hated them.
Yeah, he called them a stopgap measure, not a real solution. And I guess that's where our mini story really kicks off, because Lord wanted something better, something revolutionary.
Enter Alec Issigonis, a designer who thought way outside that proverbial box, literally.
Oh yeah, I read about that 10 by 4 by 4 foot box thing. Was that like a shipping container restriction, or was it just a crazy design challenge?
It was Issigonis' way of forcing his team to think differently. Space was at a premium, and that box became their design playground. No wasted inches allowed.
So they were basically playing automotive Tetris from the get-go. No wonder they came up with some wild solutions like that transverse engine placement. Most cars back then had their engines, what, lengthwise?
Exactly. Big, long engine taking up all that space. Issigonis turned it sideways, bam! Freed up so much room inside. One of the reasons the Mini, despite being tiny, could actually fit 4 adults.
Ish? I bet that sideways engine raised some eyebrows back then. Were there any downsides to doing that mechanically?
Well, some argued it messed with the weight distribution, affecting handling. Servicing the engine also became a bit of a contortionist act.
Yeah, I can imagine. But for Issigonis, it seems like space was king. And he didn't stop there, did he? Combining the gearbox and engine sump, that's some next-level space saving.
Oh yeah, he was all about multitasking those components. Saved space meant they could use the same oil for both, which was a big deal back then when oil wasn't exactly plentiful.
Okay, so we've got a sideways engine, combo oil, pan gearbox.
Yeah.
Any other design quirks that help make the Mini so space efficient? What about the wheels?
Ah, those 10-inch wheels. Can't forget them. Tiny wheels meant more room inside. Issigonis was really squeezing every last bit of space he could out of that design.
So it wasn't just small, it was small smart. Okay, let's talk looks for a minute.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just the brilliant engineering that made the Mini a hit. It had that certain something.
It did. Those proportions, short overhangs, wheels pushed right to the corners. It had this almost toy-like charm that people just loved.
And those round headlights, they're like the Mini's trademark.
Definitely iconic. Rover Group, who took over from BMC, actually trademarked the Mini design in the 90s. That's how recognizable and unique it was.
Wow, talk about a design that stood the test of time. Okay, before we get lost in those cute headlights, let's dive into the different Mini generations. There were a bunch, right? It was around for, what, 4 decades?
Oh, way more than that. The original Mini had a pretty long run, from 1959 all the way to 2000.
Wow, that's impressive. So let's start with the OG, the Mark I. What years are we talking?
1959 to 1967. Think sliding windows, external door hinges, that classic Mini look. Engine-wise, you had your pick of A-series engines, anywhere from a tiny 848cc to a feisty 1275cc in the Cooper S models.
Ah, yes, the Cooper S. Those are the ones that really put the Mini on the map in terms of performance, weren't they?
They were. They turned this little city car into a proper pocket rocket. Now, moving on to the Mark II, that's 1967 to 1970, we're talking subtle upgrades here. A new grille, a larger rear window, some cosmetic tweaks to keep things fresh.
So refining the original recipe, but not messing with the magic.
Exactly. They kept the core Mini DNA intact.
Makes sense. Okay, now the Mark III, when did that one roll out?
That was from 69 to 76. This is where things got a bit more adventurous. A modified body shell, bigger doors with those hinges finely concealed, and say goodbye to those sliding windows. Hello to wind-up windows.
Those are some pretty noticeable changes. Did it still look like a Mini after all that, though?
Oh, absolutely. The overall silhouette was still undeniably Mini, but those updates definitely gave it a more modern feel.
Gotcha. So what came next? Mark IV.
Yep, Mark IV, 1976 to 1983. This one focused on refinement. A smoother ride, less noise. They introduced a front subframe mounted on rubber, a big improvement for comfort, and tweaked the rear suspension, too.
Ah, finally ditching those rubber cone suspensions. I bet those improvements were appreciated by Mini drivers everywhere.
Oh yeah, definitely a welcome change. Now those refinements continued into the Mark V, which came out in '84 and ran until '90.
Hmm.
Bigger brakes for safety, plastic wheel arches to fight off rust, and this is where those special edition models really started taking off.
Ah, the special edition Minis. Always a good way to spice things up, right?
Exactly. Those limited edition minis kept rolling with the Mark VI, which came out in '90 and lasted till '96. But this one had a major comeback, the Mini Cooper.
Oh, right. I'd almost forgotten that the Cooper wasn't always around. How long was it gone for?
Believe it or not, the Cooper had been on hiatus for about 2 decades before its grand return in the Mark VI. And it came back with a bang, featuring that iconic 1275cc engine that powered those original Cooper S models.
So the Mini was ready to party like it was 1969 again.
Pretty much. And then we come to the final chapter of our original mini story, the Mark VII, from '96 to 2000. This one had some big changes, modernizing it for the new millennium. We're talking fuel injection, a front-mounted radiator, a totally redesigned dashboard, even a driver's side airbag safety first.
Well, they really brought it into the modern era with that one. But I guess even with those updates, the end was inevitable.
Sadly, yes. The automotive world was changing. Tastes were shifting. The Mini, in its classic form, just couldn't keep up with the demand for more features, more space.
It's like the things that made it great, that small size, that simplicity, those became drawbacks in a market that was obsessed with bigger, more luxurious cars.
It's the circle of life, I guess, even in the car world. But what a legacy, right?
Absolutely. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We haven't even touched on the Mini's impact on pop culture, its motorsport triumphs, those quirky variations like the Moke. There's so much more to this little car's story.
Oh yeah, we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
Get ready for a deep dive into the heart and soul of the Mini. It's a story for another time, maybe, but yeah, the Mini even dipped its toes into the military world. Well, sort of.
Okay, now I'm really curious. Military Minis. I can't even picture that.
Picture a Mini, stripped down, no doors, a roll bar, a canvas roof. They called it the Mini Moke. It was interesting.
Interesting how. Did they actually send these things into battle?
Not quite. They envisioned it as a lightweight military vehicle, but it didn't quite have the ruggedness you'd need for real combat.
I can imagine. A mini tank just doesn't sound very intimidating.
Right. But the Moke found its niche. It became a beach bum's best friend, the ultimate beach cruiser.
Okay, that makes way more sense. Sunshine and minis, now that's a good combo.
Mhm.
But the Moke wasn't the only mini variation, was it? What about the minivan?
Ah, the minivan. Now, don't think soccer moms and carpools. This was more of a workhorse. Panel van, no side windows, all about maximizing cargo space.
So, like a mini delivery truck, was it actually popular or was that more of a niche thing?
Surprisingly popular, especially in the UK. It had this weird tax advantage over passenger cars, so a lot of small businesses used them. The Mini that meant business.
I love that. Okay, now for a touch of class, the Riley Elf and the Wolseley Hornet, these are like minis trying to be fancy, right?
Exactly. Basically, they took the Mini and tried to give it a luxury makeover. Longer rear wings, a bigger boot, chrome galore. They even had fancier interiors and unique grills, to set them apart.
So, like a mini in a tuxedo. It's hard to imagine the mini being anything but, like, fun and casual. But I guess they had to try to appeal to everyone.
Right. And speaking of appealing to everyone, let's not forget the Mini Traveler and the Austin Mini Countryman, the Mini Estates.
Ah, yes, the mini estates. A little more space for those family adventures.
Basically, same classic Mini, but stretched out a bit to create a larger cargo area. And those split rear doors, those barn doors were iconic.
I've seen pictures. Those barn doors are adorable.
Right. And some of those early Travelers and Countrymen even had the wood trim on the back, that classic woody wagon look.
It's like a little British cottage on wheels. Okay, I'm ready for the next mini variant. Hit me.
All right, how about a mini pickup truck?
Wait, seriously. A mini pickup truck, like a little mini with a tiny bed in the back.
You got it. They really took that maximize space philosophy to heart with that one. It was perfect for small businesses, gardeners, anyone who needed to haul stuff but still wanted that mini maneuverability.
That is amazing. It's like they tried to make a mini for every occasion. Okay, so we've talked about all these different versions, but there's one thing we haven't touched on yet, the Mini's role in motorsport. And we can't talk about the Mini without talking about racing, right? 3 wins in a row at Monte Carlo.
Okay.
That's not just luck, that's serious skill.
Oh, you better believe it. The Mini Cooper was a force to be reckoned with on those twisty rally courses. Agility and precision were its weapons.
It's like the David versus Goliath story, but in the car world.
Exactly. It showed that you don't need brute force to win, just smart design and a bit of daring. But speaking of drama, remember that controversy I
Oh,
mentioned?
yeah, the disqualification. What's the deal with that?
Well, picture this. 1966 Monte Carlo Rally. 3 minis crossed the finish line, first, second, third. A clean sweep. But then, bam, disqualified.
Wait, seriously? After they dominated the race, why? What happened?
Officially, the reason was their headlights. Apparently, they were using an illegal combination of headlamps and spotlights, or so the race officials claimed.
Sounds a little fishy to me. A headlight technicality? Come on, there have to be more to it.
That's what a lot of people thought. Remember that rivalry between British and French car makers we talked about?
Yeah, the Cold War on wheels.
Exactly. Well, some folks believe the French organizers weren't too keen on a British sweep and used that headlight excuse to hand the victory to a French team.
So they dimmed the lights on the Mini's victory to let a French car shine. Even in the racing world, there's always more going on behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Politics and racing, they go hand in hand sometimes. But hey, whether it was a genuine violation or a bit of gamesmanship, it definitely added to the Mini Cooper legend.
It certainly made for a good story. Okay, so we've covered the Mini's racing triumphs, its dramatic disqualification, and all those quirky variations. What else have we got?
Well, we talked about the Mini's design, its engineering, its pop culture appeal, but we haven't really talked about its legacy. How did this little car from the 60s shape the automotive world as we know it?
Okay, I'm all ears. What's the Mini's lasting impact?
Well, for starters, think about that front-wheel drive transverse engine layout. It was groundbreaking at the time, and it's still the standard for most small cars today.
So every time we see one of those tiny fuel-efficient cars zipping around, we can thank the Mini for paving the way.
You got it. But its influence goes beyond just the technical stuff. The Mini also changed the way people thought about small cars. It showed that you could have practicality, affordability, and style all in one package.
It's like it said, hey, you don't need a giant gas guzzler to have fun and look cool.
Exactly. And that spirit is still alive and well in the modern MI&I brand, even though it's under BMW ownership now.
They've managed to capture that same sense of playfulness, that mininess, even while keeping up with modern design trends and technology. It's pretty impressive.
It really is. But before we move on to the modern NNI, I want to take a moment to celebrate the incredible community of Mini enthusiasts out there.
Oh, absolutely. The Mini wouldn't be the same without those passionate fans who keep its spirit alive.
It's more than just a car, it's a whole subculture. Mini clubs, rallies, restoration projects. It's amazing to see how this car brings people together.
You've got people who've owned their Minis for decades, who've poured their hearts and souls into restoring them, and then you've got younger generations discovering the magic of the Mini for the first time.
It's a testament to the Mini's enduring appeal. This isn't just a car that was popular back in the day. It's a car that continues to capture imaginations.
All right, so we've talked about the Mini's past, its present, but what about its future? I'm curious, if the Mini were to be designed today in the 21st century, what do you think it would look like?
That's a great question. It really makes you think about what makes a Mini a Mini. What are those essential elements that can't be messed with?
Okay, so let's play a game of Design the Future Mini. What are our must-haves?
Well, obviously it has to be small. That's non-negotiable. But small doesn't mean cramped or basic. With clever design, you can pack a lot of function and comfort into a tiny space.
So that Issigonis obsession with space efficiency, that's still a core principle, even in a futuristic Mini.
Absolutely. And it also has to have that playful, distinctive design. Those iconic round headlights, maybe updated with some cool LED tech, those short overhangs, the wheels pushed right to the corners. That Mini DNA has to be there.
And of course, it has to be fun to drive. That go-kart-like handling, that's a must.
Agreed. And imagine that go-kart handling with an electric powertrain. Silent, but still super fun to zip around in.
Now, that's a 21st century Mini I can get behind. But would it still be a Mini without a manual transmission?
That's a tough one. Maybe they could offer both, you know. An electric automatic for those who want the latest tech, and a sporty manual for the purists.
Okay, I can see that working. So we've got our small size, playful design, fun handling. What about technology? What kind of futuristic tech can we pack into a modern-day Mini?
Oh, the possibilities are endless. Advanced driver assistance systems, maybe even some autonomous driving features.
A self-driving Mini. Now, that's something I never thought I'd hear.
Right. It's mind-blowing to think about how far technology has come since the original Mini. But, no matter how advanced cars get, I think there will always be a place for that simple analog driving experience that the Mini represents.
Agreed. Sometimes you just want to feel the road, feel the connection between you and the car.
Exactly. And that's something the Mini does so well. It's a reminder that driving can be pure joy, pure fun.
Well said. Okay, I think we've covered just about every aspect of the Mini's design, its impact, its legacy. But before we wrap up, I have one last question that's been bugging me. We've talked about how the Mini adapted and evolved over the years, but there was one major change that ultimately led to the end of the original Mini. What was it?
Well, it all boils down to competition. The automotive landscape was changing rapidly in the late 20th century, and the Mini, despite its updates and variations, started facing some serious rivals.
Okay, so what kind of cars were muscling in on the Mini's territory?
Think about those newer super minis that were popping up: the Ford Fiesta, the Renault 5. They were offering more space, more features, more of everything that consumers were looking for.
So the Mini's small size, which was once its biggest asset, was starting to work against it.
In a way, yes. And those newer super minis were often more modern in terms of their design. Hatchbacks were becoming all the rage, and the Mini, with its classic two-box design, was starting to feel a bit dated.
The Mini's iconic look was becoming, well, a bit too iconic.
Kind of. And even the Metro, which was supposed to be the Mini's successor in the early 80s, couldn't quite capture that same magic.
Right, the Metro. It was a good car, but it just wasn't a Mini. It's like they tried to update the formula, but lost the essence of what made the Mini so special.
I think that's a good way to put it. And by the late 90s, even with the reintroduction of the Cooper, the writing was on the wall for the original Mini. Consumers had moved on, the market had spoken.
It's a reminder that even the most iconic cars have their time. But, hey, what a run, right?
Absolutely. 4 decades of production, millions of cars sold. The Mini's impact on the automotive world is undeniable.
And its legacy lives on not just in the classic Minis that are still cherished by enthusiasts all over the world, but also in the modern MINI brand.
Exactly. BMW has done a remarkable job of reimagining the Mini for the 21st century, while still staying true to those core values of fun, style, and innovation.
It's proof that a good idea, a truly great design, can transcend time.
Well said. And I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Agreed. It's been a blast exploring the world of the Mini, from its humble beginnings to its global stardom. What a car, what a story.
It really is. And to all our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Especially for you Vintage Car Chronicles fans, remember to check out our main show for a new car history episode every day.
We'll see you next time.